Gloucestershire have won a match 18 months after their last county championship victory. The boys from Bristol have a W to their name after beating Northamptonshire by 256 runs. This week on the County Conversation, we have an extended interview with Gloucestershire batter and centurion from that game, Miles Hammond, who spoke to Nick Friend about the relief, the joy, the work behind the scenes, and their battery of quick bowlers. Then after that, we'll move on to what happens next for England in the post-Jimmy Anderson world, and a nod to Benton Stokes' upcoming return for Durham. I am your host, Cameron Ponsonby, and I'm joined by Nick Friend and Nick Howson. But I'm also joined, very excitingly, by Gulliver's Sports Travel. If you fancy watching Test cricket in New Zealand, then look no further than Gulliver's 2024 packages for England's Test tour in November and December. They include, get ready for this, guaranteed matchday tickets, hand-picked hotels, flights, transfers, welcome drinks, tour group dinners, exclusive Gulliver's cricket forums, a dedicated tour manager, tour merchandise, optional sightseeing opportunities, and much, much more. For details of how to book, visit gulliverstravel.co.uk. And Gullivers, if you are listening, I will be on that tour. So if you need any Q&A hosts, drop me a line. Ad reads on the County Conversation. We're going up in the world. Right. Here's Nick Friend with Miles Hammond.
Hello and welcome. As part of this episode of Cricketers County Conversation, we're joined by Miles Hammond, the England youth off spinner turned Gloucestershire middle order linchpin. That works as an introduction. Agreed. There's an awkward laugh.
Yeah, linchpin is. I don't know, if you ask any of the lads, I think they'd probably disagree.
Linchpin means you're there. You're always there. You're basically ever present, aren't you? You're the sort of. You're all formats. Came back for the 100, played a couple of games.
Amazingly so.
Can't get rid of you.
I don't know, I've done it.
How are you?
I'm good. Reveling in our win.
Other celebrations weird. Like, I mean, it's been a while. It's been 594 days now. No, 95 days, not 93 days at the time.
Don't rub it in.
Sorry?
Don't rub it in.
Don't rub it in, no. Well, yeah, you started it. What is it like to win again?
Oh, fabulous. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you would have seen the pictures from Northampton when we got that last wicket, but I think it's pretty. That was showed pretty well how excited and how happy we were, and relieved, to be honest. It's quite nice to win a game, and I think we have a supporter called Adrian Thomas, and I think he reminded us even after we won, if we hadn't won that day, it would have been the record for the longest stint without a win for Gloucestershire. So
knocking it down even in victory. Eh?
Yeah, of course, just classic, isn't it?
What were those initial minutes like? The initial, as you say, the photos are. I don't know. Like the photos are interesting because you don't. On the face of it, you've won by 300 runs. You've dominated for 3.5 days, but it looks like almost the perfect 4-day performance, particularly after being put in. Like, but when it's been such a long time, like I guess everyone's sort of dreaming of that feeling again, kind of thing. Like, what was it like?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, from the outside, it probably looked. Yeah, I mean, it was the perfect game. We played brilliantly for all 4 days, and I don't think we lost a session really. But I think when you're in the team there, trying to get 20 wickets, bowl them out on that last day, they've got some brilliant players, and they showed glimpses of batting all day. And when you haven't won in a while, it's not necessarily that we were anxious about them batting all day, but we were more aware of how much we wanted it and how much we wanted to bowl them out. So it was almost like it wasn't an easy sort of last day. It was very much constantly trying to push for the win. And when we got it, then it was just a lot of relief, a lot of joy.
Did the anxiety grow at all? I mean, there was a night watch like I watched overnight, wasn't there? Scrimshaw, and
Yeah.
I guess like every ball, even like every ball he faces, it's like, God, we got to get through him because there's.
Well, he also shaped up better than some batters. he he played beautifully. So yeah, very glad that Shawsey could nick him off. But they got Emilio Gay, who is a very, very good player, very organised. Proctor, Vasconcelos, who's just obviously an unbelievable player. Then Karen Nair, who's got a sort of 100 this year and a test double 100, and makes bowlers look easy sometimes. But then Shanky came in and just made him, look like second team batter. So it was, there were nerves around, and then I think, we got that new ball at the perfect time as well. Just did a little bit more.
Shanky's obviously Martian Langer, who's, I don't know, he seems like the ideal character to have in a team that needs a lift.
Oh, he's an absolute lion. I don't know how he does it. I think he's like ruptured his sort of something in his ankle, but still bowled 95 miles an hour. The bloke's, I don't know if he's half human, half. Yeah, I don't know. Like he is amazing, and against Middlesex, he was absolutely awesome. That first innings, and then this game, both innings, he's pretty much won us the game there. With that spell in the first innings, getting those two in the same over, huge wickets, and then coming in on the last day, and turning the game again where we thought this is starting to get a little bit tougher. So I can't overstate the impact he's had this year.
What's it like as a character? I feel obviously he was injured for a lot of last year, and I think I'm right in saying he's sort of like club barbecuer. He's just an enormous presence, isn't he? Is that about right?
Yeah, he's absolutely mad. But absolutely life and soul. He wants the ball all the time. He wants to bowl all the time. Even if he says, I think this innings I'm just going to try and hit the top of off, accuracy and just flying at about 60%. He then, sort of 3 balls later, bowls a 90 mile an hour bumper. He's just very excitable. Loves the battle, loves winning. He's brilliant.
And obviously, I don't know, it's easy to forget in a way that there's this bloke in Division 2 who's played Test cricket for South Africa who does genuinely bowl rockets. He hit Karen Nair on the head, didn't he, in the 4th innings?
That was horrendous. That probably one of the hardest I've seen someone get hit in a game. I think he's obviously at one end of his career at the minute, and he's still getting the job done, bowling quick. The quickest bowler on show easily every game he's played in.
Do you guys face much of him? Nets wise.
Do we face? So actually, he cut. Not on grass generally, unless the pitch is pretty good. But I faced him at Derby on their indoor in their indoor school, and it was it was off a short run, but I was still very wary of the fact that he could scon me at any point. I think his action's actually tough. It's quite hard to pick up because he does slam every ball so every ball feels like it's going to be a bumper basically. And then when it does come, you sort of rapids and takes you by surprise. So yeah, not many people have played him relatively easy this year.
Am I right in saying there's this quirk in his action though, so he sort of thumps down on his calf as well, doesn't he? Is that so you get that double noise?
I think he sort of punches his own quad,
yeah.
And it makes this huge slap as he lets go of it, which sort of adds to everything.
But I guess the big difference, he's been an enormous difference for you guys this bit, but sort of collectively, you have got this genuinely quick attack, in a county game where it's constantly, a lot of the talk this year, the Kookaburras early season, and Obviously now, sort of post Jimmy Anderson, there's so much talk about pace in the domestic game and all that stuff. You've legitimately got 3 guys who are pretty consistently around 85 mile an hour plus, right? I mean, 2 of whom are
Yep.
young, fairly untested English guys in Ajit Singh Dale and Zamakta. I mean, I don't know, how nice is that? Because obviously you don't play the ground where the pitches have an enormous amount of pace. But my word's not yours.
I haven't said anything there.
But it must be interesting.
It is great. We've got obviously Zoom and Adge bowling 85 miles an hour consistently, with Shanky, nudging that up a little bit. And then you got TP, Shawsey, we've got Matt Taylor coming back, Dom Goodman, who's put on a yard this year. He's sort of about 6'9", and the nicest bloke in England until he gets a ball in his hand. And then we got Zafar Gohar, who's probably the best spinner in the division. And I think we're unbelievably lucky as a batting group to be able to have that, have those guys trying to win games for us. And I suppose, and obviously the extra pace is nice. Standing a little bit further back at gully and slips and stuff, and you can rough people up and whatever. But I think the fact that we've got that really balanced attack when people are fit, and that's the only thing that we need to try and do in a really condensed, long county season, is manage those people. And I think Boo Boo is doing a great job of that with the science medicine team. And but when you've got that sort of attack out there most weeks, it's and you're scoring runs, I think, touch wood, we can keep doing that. And it's obviously early on. It's only 4 games in, and we've finally won a game, but it is genuinely exciting. But at the same time, it's kind of, how fickle this game is, and how a couple of injuries and things can hamper that, and how a poor decision by a batter every now and again can turn the tide a little bit. So it's like we've got to keep on pushing that bar upwards, like Boo Boo would say, doing our ordinary really well all the time, and pushing that ordinary up a little bit every game.
Obviously, the 2 of us have talked a lot before about the sort of the relentlessness of the schedule and that kind of thing. I mean, are these weeks ahead where it does get quite challenging for a county like yours? I mean, as you said there, like the issue you guys had last year was that by September, I think Zamanata was the only one of those who played in your final game of the season. By September, Delanga was done, Singdale was done, Tom Price was done. Is this where it gets quite challenging? Once the blast bit comes in, the end of these sort of 7 Champo rounds, 2 Champo rounds in the middle of the blast as well. Is this where actually managing players becomes quite tough?
I think this year, especially so with the Kookaburra games at the start of the year, where obviously bowlers have bowled a lot more in the first. I mean, we were lucky that we had we had a whole game rained off at Derby. But so if you put that sort of 6-week block of cricket with 2 weeks of Kookaburra cricket at the period of the year where historically there's been more runs scored than any other period of the year, and then you're going into a T20 block, which is hectic as you like, with 4-day cricket in there as well. I'd say right now it's really crucial going to Leicester, and then having Derby at home ahead of a hectic T20 schedule, where we've got our 2 games of back-to-back, and then we've got Scarborough in the middle of there, and whatever. I mean, this is the bit of the year which is really taxing for the bowlers especially, but also just
is that physically and mentally? I mean, I guess would it be fair to say that, I don't know, like if you can have a decent Champo block that you guys have had with, it's a win, 3 draws and 1 defeat. Like if you can finish these next two well and go into the blast, you sort of, even mentally, and particularly given the amount of time you spend on the road, and as you say, you've got that Thursday at Glamorgan, Friday at Bristol, Sunday at Scarborough, 4-day trip to factor in. Like, are those much easier when you're going all right as a team? Like, is it? I guess you've been on the other end of it last year when you were winless. Like, is it much easier to do that block when you do have a bit of sort of collective momentum about you?
Yeah, I think it works sort of in a couple of ways. I mean, obviously, when you're playing well and guys are in good form and people are getting wickets and getting runs, then mentally it's easier to be refreshed for games coming up. But on the other side of it, if you're doing well and you're picking up bonus points and you're batting well, then it sort of takes a little bit of the pressure off having to have your best bowling attack out every week. Obviously, you want to win every game you can, but there's sort of, when you're playing well and you've got points in the bag and you've won a game, I suppose it's then easier to make the right decision on a physical standpoint than it would be if, say, we come off 3 losses in a draw and you're chasing your tail.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are two. I mean, obviously, and and mentally, I think just as much as the physical side of things, I think, this next block is for everyone to try and stay as fresh as they can and try and keep being excited to play is really, really important.
How did that work last? I guess if you sort of compared what we've seen this year to last year, I don't know. How does the dressing room hold that together when you were, say, like when you are properly chasing your tail in the Championship, and I guess you'd come down into Division 2 from relegation in 2022, presumably coming to last year trying to get promoted straight back up. Like, how did you guys stick together? How hard is that when you are, say, when you're winless and when that run is going on? And there are a couple of games last year in the early season, was it Worcester away, where like the weather probably stopped you guys from winning straight away, and I don't know, and pretty quickly that sort of rut sort of comes in.
Yeah, it's obviously hard to, and I don't think we did a great job of it. But I think that's the great thing about a year like that, is it's just a learning year, isn't it? So, we had a couple of games, Derby away and Worcester away, at the beginning of last year, where we're in the box seat to win both those games, but the weather got in the way. And that is what it is, and I don't think we handled that particularly well as a group. I think we were probably a bit angsty to get winning and get going, and so I mean, the learning from this year is just to try and be a little bit more patient and stick to the process a little bit more. Even now that we've had a decent start, we've still lost a game against Sussex that we should never have lost, and we've learned from that and put it right for the next couple of games against Middlesex and Northants, and it's just about trying to implement those things that we've learned over the last 2-3 years of really tough years, and now it's a case of trying to not rest, like, because we've had those couple of really tough years. It's actually easier to keep on sort of keeping on rather than chasing things, and because we know how fickle this game is.
Did you ever start thinking that it won't come?
No, but it does become harder when you're in sort of 50-50 situations, because you don't have that confidence and that sort of winning rhythm, and that is a thing, like everyone loves talking about momentum in sport, but it is a thing. I know whether you can measure it or not is a different thing, but it is a huge thing, and now we've managed to win. I think the confidence you can gain from that, and the manner we did it as well, even more so. So I don't think that we ever thought that we weren't ever going to win again.
But does it start to feel like that? Like,
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Well,
well,
like I
not so
said
much we're never
earlier,
going to win again, but is it like,
yeah,
you had there
I,
was a pretty close, you dominated against Middlesex, couldn't quite get over
yeah.
the line. You had,
Well,
you
as I
had
said,
those near misses. Like, do you
yeah,
start thinking, here we go again? Is that, I guess that's the question. Like,
yeah. I mean, and it made. I mean, the game against Northants, obviously, that last innings, even though it looked, we won by 250 runs or whatever, and it absolute pounding. But when we were out there, it was like we were, you know, I was knackered after that day of cricket because you just you
yeah.
like wanting you like, oh God, are they going to bat? Are they going to bat? No, come on. And I think that's the difference. Where if you're in a side that has won a lot in those situations, you're probably a little bit more relaxed about it.
On your own form, your scores this year are mad. You're like, I've got them here 43. So we've done 43, 35, 56, 77, 81, 11, 112, 28. What happened with the 11?
Yeah.
I think I was there for that. And you pulled one straight at the only man on the leg side, no?
It turns out I'm not great at batting for the draw. Yeah, to be honest, I've been batting really well for the last couple of years. I just haven't quite been consistently scoring runs like I am this year. But also, the 100 was huge for me this week. I sort of got 950s or 8 or 950s last year without a big score. I'd obviously started this year again with 350s, an 80 or 70, and like that was obviously playing on my mind a bit. So getting past that sort of 60s, 70s, 80s, I actually got into the 90s and I felt pretty calm. It was more nerve wracking when I was in the 60s and 70s. But yeah, I think that's huge, and it's big learning again, just for me there. So yeah, great to get 100, and I feel like I've been batting pretty nicely for the last couple of years.
Because I think I was sent the stream commentary, and the commentators couldn't believe it was your fourth first class 100. Like you obviously looked, as you say, like you've looked $1 million all year, and you don't know, like got all the shots. Like what, like don't know, where does that? Is it like joke at the start about like the England youth off spin stuff? But I don't know, like is it different when you're sort of brought up not necessarily as a frontline batter? I don't know, like is it a mindset? Is it a mindset thing that, or is it?
Yeah,
like what is? Yeah, I'm sure you've thought about it.
I think it's quite clearly a mindset. If I've got 26 50s in my career and 400, so it's like conversion rate's real good there. But I think I think you might be right. I don't know, but I think it's obviously it's been my own sort of fault for having sort of previous years maybe being a bit carefree in after 50 and enjoying myself too much, so then that becoming a bit of a thing, and then being a bit stressed out about being in the 60s and 70s, and trying to just flip that this week into going, do you know what, I'm going to really enjoy being in and seeing the ball brilliantly, and I'm just going to bat as if I'm the hundreds, 200 instead of 100, so that doesn't feel like I'm trying to get there. It's just I'm just going to keep batting and trusting the fact that I'm good enough to get there anyway.
Do you need that sort of validation? Like, is that what the 100 does for you? I guess you've sort of got like a pretty good template now for how you can do that. Like once you do get a start.
I think it shows, getting hundreds is it like does help to win games. I think it's our job as batters to get hundreds, really, isn't it? Or to get more hundreds than I've been getting, with the amount of opportunities I've had. Because actually, look at that Middlesex game, I got 80 odd, and you just put another 30 runs on that, and maybe the bowlers don't come back, and then I can get a few more, and that then sets up the game. We're then how many more runs ahead there. So obviously it's a big thing, and it's just the more runs you can get, the better. But obviously, you also get thought of a little bit more highly if you get hundreds instead of loads of 50s. So it's like a big thing for me and the team. I think like first innings hundreds are big, and also for my own career, not looking back and going off. I've let a few slide there.
And just lastly, I mean, I guess on the, sort of like individually and collectively, I mean, what has changed this year? Obviously lost, obviously lost Dale Benkenstein to Lancashire in just after Christmas, and then Mark start of March, and I don't know, like, could have gone south, like from where you were last year to have that upheaval quite late on.
Yeah, I think it's been turbulent. I think never helps having coaches sort of come in one door and out the other, and it is tough. And Benke's situation was difficult. I don't think the club necessarily gave him the backing that he would have wanted, but also that's his decision and whatever. And to have Boo Boo come in a little bit later, of course, was difficult. But we had a core group of coaches to really get us through the winter brilliantly well. And without those guys like working ridiculously hard, I won't say who they are because obviously I don't want to pick anyone out, but like it was honestly that bit from sort of the end of November when Benke left to when we went on pre-season tour in March. It could have been really difficult.
Yeah,
but there are a couple of people in that coaching staff who did unbelievably well for us and have played a massive part in getting us ready. And I don't think that should be overlooked really.
and in terms of what Mark's done, is he? I don't know. Even just like listening to his listening to the way he spoke from very early on, it was quite bullish in a way. Like that maybe, I don't know, maybe things weren't in the last couple of years with, I guess, sort of like injuries to their toll and stuff like that. Is he just sort of, I don't know, does it feel that way? Do you feel, is it a bit more, I don't know, like win first perhaps and sort of positive and, I don't know, like really targeting promotion in a way that you couldn't necessarily last year?
No, I think that would be unfair on Benke because I think he certainly was very positive and win first and everything. I think Boo Boo is great with the process. He's very, very mindful of the process. We've had a lot of meetings, batting bowling groups. We've had a lot of conversation and I think we've always been wanting to win, and I think there's always been that want to win. But I think I think maybe this year the individual players are playing better because they realised that last year wasn't good enough, and that should be, players have taken that responsibility and always should, and I think that's brilliant. And and Boo Boo's come in and been a brilliant support. Had great conversations, like absolute fountain of knowledge when it comes to cricket, and knows how to win. Knows that the process is really, really important. He often, in quite a not an aggressive way, but he brings us back down to earth during the games. And some of his chats are really, really important, and the timing of them, and so I think he has been brilliant. But I don't think it's revolutionary or
no, sure.
I do think that individual players have gone away and worked really, really hard and come back in much better spot than last year. And also, we need to remember that we're only 4 games in, and we've won 1 game, and we haven't won anything yet. So yeah, we're all very, very mindful of the fact that we need to keep doing this until September, the back end of September, and that's what defines the cricket season, really.
Right, we should leave it there. Just let you go and train.
Miles Hammond and Nick Friend there. And Nick, Howson, something that struck me was how much Hammond was emphasising just how difficult and how much work goes into a 4-day win. And that, well, like, unless you're Surrey, they are often incredibly rare.
Yeah, I don't know if it was Miles being like sort of emotionally broken by spending sort of 25 minutes speaking to Nick, but you could really sense the relief, I think, in his tone, in his voice. It wasn't so much elation, although those celebrations at the end did sort of suggest that, but clearly, as I said, a monkey off their back, so to speak. I don't think, and he said this during one of the answers, that the team hadn't felt like they didn't know where the next win was coming from, but they certainly felt as if it was a huge moment, and clearly just glad to know what winning feels like again. That was certainly the feeling I got from him and how the team kind of reacted to it. You could sense at the end there the celebrations were euphoric. You'd have thought they'd won promotion or won the title or something. So it was fantastic from that perspective.
They were genuinely wonderful photos at the end of that match, and they kind of belied the result. It was a 250-run win, which means that's kind of routine, as it were. It looks routine in terms of a convincing victory, but the relief is kind of very palpable across all their faces. Nick Friend, you were talking about how before we went on air or started recording, to use the correct parlance, like 3 or 4 wins in a 14-game season can often get you promoted. Like, do people understand just how well you have to play across 4 days to secure a victory? Because to fall into cliches, you can lose a match in a session, but you can't win a match in a session.
And there's another step in there as well. You've got to play. If 2 teams play very well for 4 days, you tend to draw. So there's playing well, but there's also playing sort of better than that at the right times to if you take the example of the Gloucestershire Northants game, they got a 200-plus first innings lead, chose not to enforce the follow-on. They essentially played the perfect game, won by 4 o'clock on the 4th day. But if you take Gloucestershire's defeat at Sussex a couple of rounds ago, where they traded 400-plus scores in the first innings and then basically had a bad half sessions against Jaden Seals and Ollie Robinson with a new ball, and literally lost 6 of that on the 4th afternoon. So the margins, I think the margins are fine, because it's one thing playing well and winning, but the norm is to play well and to not win. If you look at Division 2, I think you can really sum it up by looking at Division 2 and Division 1. 21 points separate Surrey and everyone else in Division 1. 21 points Division 2 separate Sussex in 1st and Northampton 7th. Derby are, Derby is sort of struggling behind on 43 points. But that is 7 teams separated by the same margin that separates the top 2 in the top tier. Gloucester now one of 4 teams who've won a game in Division 2. Sussex won twice, which are at the top. But I think that sums it up in a way. In a way, Gloucestershire's sort of fallow run sort of hits Glamorgan. Glamorgan, I think, won their first game in, I think it was 363 days, so the equivalent round last year. So as Nick said, they are a rarity, and you do have to play well, and particularly this time of year when there's a bit of rain around. Kookaburra is making it harder to win as well, as we found out those first couple of rounds. It's really hard. And I think Miles pointed to Worcestershire last year. They didn't have to win many games of cricket to get promoted. But what Worcestershire do have is a result surface at home where results are slightly easier to come by than they are elsewhere.
And I think one thing that, again, going back to the tone at which Miles was talking in, it really highlights what it takes. Just building on what Nick said there, really highlights what it takes to win a 4-day game. In a T20, someone can have a day out, and it doesn't matter how well you've prepared or where you've been or how well you've played as a unit. Sometimes there's literally nothing you can do to kind of mitigate that. But 4-day cricket, like, there's a reason why it's quite close to Test cricket, right? It requires all components or lots of components of your team and of your game to kind of come together at the same time. And again, as Nick also mentioned, like, there's so much also out of your hands as far as like 4-day cricket is concerned. You know, you can we've mentioned, continuously in the first couple of weeks about balls and pitches and rain and stuff, and that there's so many things that you can't affect in a 4-day game that you need to go your way just before you even consider whether you're playing at your best or playing well enough. And for teams that aren't Surrey, as you say, they don't. There's not a huge amount of wins, certainly around this season, and generally for teams at this sort of level, they just aren't happening all the time. So I don't think it's patronising to say, like, yeah, well done. Winning a 4-day game is difficult. Yeah, that it's also all right to say that's cool as well. And I think sometimes winless runs, and again, Miles mentioned this during the chat with Nick. Like, he mentioned the number of near misses there have been. Like, sometimes winless runs can mask actual good cricket as well. And I think that's also worth emphasising. Nick mentioned, Derbyshire, who are, I think, even longer, over 650 days since their last first-class win. But that kind of masks, some opportunities that they've had as well. So I think it's worth, mentioning. I think it's okay to mention that winning a 4-day game is actually a pretty good achievement.
No, I agree. And I think what they've done, I think where they actually deserve some credit this year is they've gone out their way to try and find ways of doing it. I know we touched on it a couple of weeks ago, but even the hybrid game they played against Middlesex, that was done in an attempt to change their home conditions, to give their bowlers a proper advantage, to see if they could create a result on home ground where it's traditionally not that easy to win because of the pace of the pitch and stuff like that. It's not easy but even that didn't get them a win. And like, they lost 6 or 7 games last year, I think, and drew the others. But it is easy as well to look past a couple of those games where I think they're decked out early to try and set up, the potential to bowl a team out in the 4th innings and lost once they knew they weren't going up. Like, really, what have you got to play for apart from trying to win a game? It's hard, as you said. The thing with those near misses, the more of those you get, I suspect that further away a win feels. Like, as much as Miles said that they never went, oh, where's the next one coming from? You must start thinking at some point, God, like, what have we got to do? And which is why this example is so good, because it is the perfect game. 400 first innings, roll your op over 170, back that up in the second innings, and then give yourself 5 sessions in the 4th innings.
I know what they've got to do. 3 tiers of 6. 5-day matches, home and away, more time, give people an opportunity to win again. There's so many draws. And if you were listening last week, you'll know that Daryl Mitchell adopted my idea as official PCA policy. That is not true. That is a lie, but I will continue to say it until it comes into fruition. I've got some breaking news for you. Jimmy Anderson, it's his last year of Test cricket. He's only got 1 more match. He's going to finish at Lords, having had Brendan McCullum fly all the way from New Zealand to break up with him, which is a hell of a commitment from old BMAC. I just thought you'd get to the Abu Dhabi lounge and turn around and bottle it, basically. But what does it mean? What does the future look like for England? Well, this is going to be the debate for, however many months until the Lords fixture. I guess what we're going to talk about is is there a debate, really? Because you don't really have to look too far for clues. England, for the first time, announced these multi-year central contracts back at the back end of 2023. And if you look there, you can see the names that are very likely to come up as potential replacements. So Mark Wood, Jofra Archer, Chris Wokes, Matthew Potts, Gus Axton, Josh Tong, and Bryden Cast all have contracts. They could be the next cabs off the rank, as it were. Brendan McCullum all but guaranteed Atkinson a debut over this summer at the back end of the India tour. Saka Mahmood, he's got a development contract. He's just come back for Lancashire. That's one to watch, probably in the long run, as opposed to being straight back into the international fold. I think, Nick Howson, I'll come to you first. Is this a talking shop? Is there actually stuff to discuss, or do we know the next players who are going to come in? Or is there a chance that there might be a room for a Sam Cook or a Dylan Pennington?
I think it depends what you want to achieve in the short term, I think. Because clearly the reason why Anderson is being asked to move on, or was asked to move on, is because England want to future plan a little bit for the Ashes in 18 months and so, right? Clearly, I think it's reasonable to say that that English cricket has a stock of fast bowlers either in the central contracted list that you mentioned or in county cricket to win series against the West Indies and Sri Lanka, with all due respect, this summer. Now, if that's the extent of their ambitions, then I don't think there's a massive problem here, and I think we can start turning our attention to paying tribute to England's greatest ever fast bowler. However, that wasn't the reason why Jimmy Anderson was necessarily passed over beyond the first test of this summer. It was with the view of future planning, and some of those names on that list have either, frankly, failed in Australia before, or don't necessarily have the skill set to perform well there. And England will go with another one-paced attack, basically, that they've been criticised with taking for the last couple of tours. So I think it's a difficult balance. I think the answer's there. If you just want to beat West Indies and Sri Lanka, I think it's easy there. I think the complicated answer is, if you want a future plan, who are you looking at? I think that's where the problem is. We don't often have this conversation about the quality of county seamers the quality of county cricket in relation to seamers too often, mainly because Broad and Anderson have been in the way in that regard, and would. Like we have it way more often about batters and spinners. We haven't had it too often about this subject. So it's an interesting one. It will expose, I think for some, it will expose the quality, if there is any, or the depth, if there is any, over the next couple of months, I guess. The moment that the West Indies are 330 for one on day one of the second test, and suddenly it's going to be we're going to be marching in. What I mean is that we're going to be marching into a conversation about the quality of county cricket once again, whether we like it or not. So yeah, I think it depends what the question is. Really, it depends on what the answer is. But I suspect England have got it in the short term. And I think there's definitely a debate to be had about what the long term looks like.
I think I disagree with the kind of slightly out of the side of the mouth remark that, well, if you're getting rid of Anderson because you're planning for Australia, you've got to get rid of like Chris Woakes as well, because there are only 4 spots in any given team to bowl seam. So even if you replace one, that is still 25% of the kind of pressure on places relieved. There's still an opportunity to rotate there and give people opportunities. I think you can have your cake and eat it, where you can go, we want to have a look at Atkinson, we want to have a look at Tongue, we want to have a look at Potts and Carson and whoever. And we also want to make sure we're still winning and still picking the best 11 possibly for this week ahead, which is what Stokes and McCullum's thing always has been until, well, last week, whilst also picking Chris Woakes and kind of winning the matches. But if there are going to be bolters, Nick Friend, who are we thinking of? Who are the names that come to mind? So you've got Sam Cook and Jamie Porter at Essex as 2 people with incredible county records, but kind of almost weirdly their criticism was that they were too Anderson-esque. It was kind of like, well, you're not bowling 85 miles an hour, so we're not interested. We've got the control swing bowler. Do they come back into a conversation? Dylan Pennington plays up at Nottinghamshire. I hate to admit, I haven't seen him bowl because I don't live there. But he's like being the name that's often mentioned now. He's kind of picking up a bit of pace in terms of his kind of name drops within the media. Who are we looking at? Who's going to be the exciting new toy for us to get our eyes on?
There will be bolters, because for context, I've been at an iHawk media briefing earlier today, and one of the things to come out of that was
good stuff.
That was interesting was essentially by having it across the whole county system this year rather than last year when it was being trialled. I'm not sure bolters is the right word. They're not. I feel like bolters implies you don't have to do very much, but essentially this having iHawk and having data across every single player on the county circuit and what they're doing, being fed back to the ECB essentially in real time, means that they'll quickly find anyone who's doing all the things they want them to do. So, as Rob Key said before, bowl at 85 mile an hour plus, be tall enough to extract some bounce. Maybe there's someone who swings it miles or seams it a long way, or all those kinds of things. That is what it's there for. It doubles up and has a lot of things that can help individuals improve and can help counties improve and all that kind of stuff. But fundamentally, it's a high performance toy for the England team. And So you will get, if you want to use the word bolters, you'll get guys who haven't necessarily been on the radar because what they were doing wasn't being tracked. Having interviewed Dylan Pennington last week, I don't think he would say that he's massively changed the bowler in the last 6 months. What he has changed is, and worked all winter on, was keeping his pace consistently higher. So, not bowling a quick spell and then being down by 8 mile an hour in the second spell, but being able to essentially, sort of stick around your median spot for as long as you can do. He'll be talked about because he's 6'2" and he's broad-shouldered and he's quick and he gets bounce, and he's been around the England radar since he played in the 19s at a World Cup with Will Jacks, Harry Brook, Tom Banton, etc. So, and he was talked about then. I don't know if you recall, but he was this big strapping lad at 18 years old, play at a World Cup for England, and people. It was through the night, but he in the early games he was on people's radar. So maybe it's taken a bit longer than people might have expected, but it's no surprise that his name's being mentioned in the same way that Josh Howell's a 6'7" left-arm seamer. He's not done that much in the professional game yet, but you can see why people like him. And then you've got the guys, as you say, who've been around. Like, it's not like they've not been. I sort of disagree with what Nick said before. Like, I feel like we have this discussion every single time England lose a series abroad about lack of pace in the English game. It's nothing new. The only thing that's new is we absolutely need someone for right now for an English summer, because there's a spot that's no longer Anderson's, rather than how do we go and win in Australia in 2 years' time. So the chat's nothing new at all. And we've gone through these, so many of these guys. I can't remember if you mentioned Ollie Stone before. He's back fit now. What's important, I think, is that you don't need to, just because they're fit now, they don't need to play now. England in the past, I think, have been guilty of getting that, having their quicks fit and going, right, let's get them in. Let's get them in. They did it with Archer, they've done it with Stone before. Just because Saqib is back, give him a chance. Give him the time it takes to get proper ready. But there are other guys. Ajit Singh Dale, I think, is probably consistently the quickest bowler in the country right now. England qualified on the county circuit. That I'd say not Mark Wood, not Jofra Archer, but guys who are playing every week in the championship. Just that's purely on what I've seen him in, really. And then other lads who we mentioned here in other weeks, Zaman Akhtar, another lad at Gloucestershire, probably quite early for him, but he's another one who's around 85 miles an hour. Dan Worrell, we've probably touched on before. He's not eligible till next year, but that'd be interesting.
He is not playing Test cricket for England.
Let's
not go down that road. Come on, man.
Let's not. I'm not throwing his name out. I'm not saying he will.
What do you mean you're not throwing his name out? You just said it.
I know. I'm not saying he will, but I am throwing his name there because he is an interesting point.
So you are throwing out there now.
No, I don't think he'll play for all the. He's got an ODI wicket for Australia. It would be interesting. And Gus Atkinson, I don't know if you did you say Gus's name? He's uncapped, but he spent all winter with England in India. So you'd expect Atkinson will play. You'd expect they've got to play. They've got to work out where he is. Jamie Overton played a Test match a couple of years ago for these same reasons. So
he's injured.
He's injured, but my point is there are lots of guys already on the radar, and the guys who aren't on the radar right now will soon be, because the data coming back from the iHawk stuff is the data they want to know the answers to.
Sure. So just to catch people up a little bit, the iHawk data is the cameras that umpires are wearing on their chest.
There's a GoPro on their chest.
Domestic match. There's a GoPro on the chest, and from that you can glean kind of how fast everyone's bowling. So that's where Ajit Singh Dale, where Miles Hammond and Nick were chatting earlier about kind of Gloucestershire's battery of quicks. They've got Zum Akhtar, Ajit Singh Dale, Marchand de Lange bowling serious gas down at the county ground in Bristol. Anderson will not be playing this weekend at Blackpool against Durham, but someone who will be is Benjamin Stokes. He's back for his first county game for Durham in almost 2 years. I had a look, it's just his fifth game for Durham in almost 6 years. He is, in theory, available for 4 championship matches, and then the Blast having ruled himself out of the T20 World Cup. Nick Howson, do we have any indication, and the answer to this can be no, do we have any indication of like what role he will be playing for Durham over the coming months? I know Ryan Campbell, the Durham head coach, kind of was asked by the press quite a lot about kind of the prospect of having Stokes back.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a slightly uncomfortable question for him, given that he's essentially he's got England's Test captain available to him, and yet he's got a real gun 11, and finding a spot for him is not difficult, but it's complex. It's not a simple situation for him. I asked him that question. How do you kind of balance that situation? And he didn't really have an answer for me. And the thing with Durham is they've got lots of low order batters or middle order that can bat a lot. Potts got a maiden first class 100 this year. We know Bryden Cass can bat, although he's not having an amazing season with the ball. I was at the Ageers I was at the Utilita Bowl even on Monday, and Ben indeed, and Ben Rain's got a 50 there, so they've clearly got the and they'll want to play the spinner. So getting him in is going to be difficult. I think he talked about Clark and Ollie Robinson probably batting a bit lower down, which just extends that ridiculous batting lineup. So now, not particularly sure how it's going to work, but it's obviously going to, and clearly it's a massive boost to a team who are still unbeaten. I think one of only 3 in Div 1. So yeah, I mean, clearly a massive boost. It's going to be interesting to see how things go. Obviously, clearly from a bowling perspective, that's where all the eyes are going to be on in terms of, the whole reason why Stokes is playing this stint is missing the World Cup and having missed the IPL is to ensure that he can be fully fit for the Test summer and beyond. And clearly, how he goes with the ball is going to be the most interesting. Obviously, against a Lancs batting lineup that we've seen looks pretty fragile and pretty feeble at this stage. So yeah, really interesting to see how he gets on. And I'll leave it to Campbell to see how he actually fits Stokes in.
I think we have quite an exciting couple of months ahead. And I'm not a qualified physio. I do not know what Ben Stokes' rehab plan is. But the fact of the matter is, it's not like he's a batter who just
all
wants
the
to try and
qualified
have
physios
fun.
do know.
They all know. They know that physios
It's on the group chat.
But it'll be a case of Stokes wants to get back fit to bowl, and the way you get back fit to bowl is bowling. So that requires kind of match time and match practice. So it's not like a case of that Stokes can get down the gym and be like, you know what, I'll be better off with a break at the moment. Which is what he did last year when he was trying to get fit again. He was like, I can't play any extra cricket. My knee needs time to recover. Now it's a case of building strength rather than bringing the knee back from injuredness. So I think we might see a lot of Ben Stokes in the County Championship. We might see a lot of Ben Stokes in the Vitality Blast.
Yeah,
I told you, I've actually going to upgrade myself. I am qualified as a physio and a doctor. I know all of these things, all of the above. This is knee. It's the bit that bends in the middle of his leg. Look, Anderson's finished. Stokes is coming back. Gloucestershire are back on the board. Nobody covers county cricket like the Cricketer, and you get access to our coverage of all 18 teams online. I thought that was quite a good segue. Saying 3 obvious things.
It was the thing that. Sorry, it was just the knee, the thing of the middle of the leg that bends that got me. I don't know why I found that so funny. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I am correct. Right. The Cricketer, County Conversation. This has been episode 7, I believe. If you do like our coverage of county cricket, and both Nicks will be all across the country at games, giving you the inside track, speaking to the people who matter, understanding the points that are salient, and then relaying them to you, you can subscribe for as little as £3.99 a month. Our own top team of county championships have now won the outstanding online coverage of domestic cricket prize at the ECB Domestic Awards for 6 years running. So you don't have to take our word for it. If you don't want to, oh my goodness me, I always get this bit wrong, don't I? Just click the link in the show notes to subscribe if you wish to. Thank you to both Nicks. Thank you to Miles for joining us, and we'll be back next week. Goodbye.